Welcome to Monster of the Week, the only show on the internet that takes your favorite old school D&D monsters, dives into their lore, publication history, hits you with a few spicy plot hooks, and ultimately converts them into 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. My name is Josiah, also known as Dungeon Dad, and this week I've got something really special for you. The Grisgol is a construct, meaning that it is a creature created by someone else, usually a practitioner of magic. But this one is a little different than your standard golem or living statue. The Grisgol harbors a dark secret. It first appeared in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition as part of the Monster Manual 3, a book which I have pulled many creatures out of in the past to cover on this channel. Seriously, you guys, it might be my favorite D&D monster book ever published by Wizards of the Coast. In this book, on page 76, we find a creature that looks sort of like a mummy at first glance, except it's got a badass cape and a cool helmet. But when we take a closer look, we see that the Grisgol is indeed a construct. The Grisgol is a very specialized type of golem. It's not carved out of stone, or formed from clay, or stitched with flesh, or forged in iron. It is made of whatever random magic stuff happened to be laying around at the time. Its skeleton is formed with magic wands, faintly enchanted armors, and other old magic objects whose magic properties have long since faded away for the most part. As it lumbers around, the sound of half-filled potion bottles can be heard clanking and sloshing about, positioned inside the creature's body the same way that organs may be positioned in one of our bodies. Its skin, if you even want to call it that, is mostly taken from old spell scrolls and magic tomes, which still have a trace amount of arcane power left in them. Essentially, all of this is just to say that the Grisgol is built from magic junk and animated by the trace amounts of magical energy that still clings to these objects. Personally, I think that's pretty cool, and I'm always down with anything that promotes recycling. However, I mentioned earlier that the Grisgol harbors a dark secret, and that is really why we're here today. When I was first doing research for this video and I started looking up everything about the Grisgol in the Monster Manual, I thought the concept of a creature made of magic trash was really fun and interesting, but as I read on about what lies at the heart of the Grisgol, I knew I had to show it to the world. See, all this enchanted refuse works great as a conduit for the magic required to animate the Grisgol's body. Think of it like a copper wire being used to transmit electricity. But we still need a power source, something to generate a magical charge and bring our new creation to life. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of random magic stuff in the shape of a dude. And that something is a lich's phylactery. For those of you who don't know what a phylactery is, it's basically an object that a powerful wizard has chosen to store their soul inside of. They do so in order to become immortal. By binding their soul into the object, it prevents them from moving on into the afterlife if their body is destroyed, thus allowing them to live forever as an undead creature known as a lich. Typically what happens when a lich dies is that their body reappears in a cloud of fog and lightning near their phylactery after they are killed. Of course, we all know the only way to truly kill a lich is to destroy their phylactery, thus preventing them from regenerating when their body is destroyed. In the case of the Grisgol, where the phylactery is being used as the heart of this construct's power, the phylactery, while not destroyed in this instant, doesn't really function as normal either. Its regeneration effects are sort of put on pause, I guess you could say, while it's providing magical power to the Grisgol's body. If you're watching this video, you're probably like me and you've already got a bunch of D&D story ideas swimming around in your head with how this could play out. And that is exactly why we're talking about the Grisgol this week. We're most definitely going to dive into a ton of plot hooks and story backstory ideas for how a Grisgol can be incredibly useful as a tool for storytelling. But it's also very important to understand just exactly what its abilities are and how they function in combat, mechanically speaking. As always, there is a 5th edition conversion of this monster linked in the description below in the form of a Google document. So if you want to use this monster and you think it sounds neat and you're not playing 3rd edition D&D, but you are playing 5th edition D&D, everything you need is right there. Dungeon Dad is not liable for total party kills as a result of using his monsters in combat. Also, if you find these videos valuable as a resource or just plain entertaining, please consider leaving a like, leaving a comment. All that stuff helps me out tremendously. Now get those magic weapons ready because it is time for clocking in at a CR of 13. The Grisgol is pretty similar to your typical golem in a lot of ways. It is of course immune to non-magical damage and has a ton of condition immunities. It's got a couple powerful slam attacks and generally does the same kind of golem-y stuff that golems do. I'm sure you all understand how slam attacks work, so rather than getting into all that stuff, let's take a look at what makes the Grisgol vastly different from your average golem. For starters, it has the ability to cast spells. What spells can it cast? Well, it can cast 10 different spells once per day, every day, and these spells may vary significantly from Grisgol to Grisgol. See, as part of the Grisgol's creation, its body is wrapped in old scroll parchment and magic tome pages. And the 10 spells that the Grisgol can cast are determined by what spells are inscribed on the spell pages wrapped around its body. On the stat block, you'll see a typical list of what are the 10 most common spells your average Grisgol will have access to, but you should feel free to mix and match spells as you please. In fact, I encourage you to try to find some fun spell combos this creature might be able to take advantage of. Keep in mind though that if you do decide to mix up the spells your Grisgol has access to with some more powerful options, it's going to potentially make the fight much harder. As the Grisgol casts its spells against the party, I would also be sure to point out how a specific magic rune or seal somewhere on the Grisgol's body lights up and then fades away. I think this detail is really important because A, it really seems thematically cool and interesting, and B, it will inform your players that, without telling them directly, each one of these spells is kind of a one-time deal. Unless, of course, you just opt to give it 10 fireballs as it's 10 spells per day, in which case you are a terrible person, but you have my respect. The Grisgol also has 2 defining traits that I want to talk about. The first is called Choking Dust, and it does pretty much exactly what you'd expect, and more. Whenever the Grisgol takes slashing or bludgeoning damage, a cloud of choking dust and mold explodes from the creature in a 10-foot radius surrounding it on all sides. If you're in the blast zone when the dust starts a-flying, you need to make sure you can succeed on a Constitution saving throw of 16, and if you fail it, you're poisoned. Being poisoned sucks, but if you don't do anything about that poison for 24 hours, you have to make another DC 16 saving throw. If you fail your second saving throw, guess what, gang? You are now the proud owner of a disease called Slimy Doom. Casters of the spell Contagion may be familiar with the effects of Slimy Doom, but for the rest of us sane folks out here, let's take a look and see what this disease actually does. Slimy Doom causes the target to bleed uncontrollably, resulting in disadvantage on Constitution checks and saving throws, and in addition, whenever the creature takes damage, they are paralyzed until the end of their next turn. That is not a disease you want to have when you are in a profession that involves taking damage on a semi-daily basis. The final trait the Grisgol has to offer is a truly bizarre one called Maddening Remains. Now, just looking at this massive block of text, it should inform you there's a lot going on with this trait, so let me try to simplify this down to what it does on a basic level. When a Grisgol dies, it has a chance to drive one of its killers completely bonkers, essentially transforming them into Charlie Day from that one episode of It's Always Sunny. You know the one, with the charts.
Check this out. Take a look at this. Jesus Christ, Charlie.
One of the first things a group of adventurers is liable to do when they destroy a monster literally made of treasure is to sift through all of its remains and see if there's anything salvageable in there. What valuable trinkets might this creature's corpse render unto us? And while this is a great opportunity for the dungeon master to give the party a few peculiar magic items they might not find otherwise, most importantly, anyone who actually searches through the creature's remains has to succeed on a DC 16 wisdom saving throw. And if they fail that save, they are cursed with a very specific brand of paranoia.
Oh shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
They become convinced that all the little parchment scraps and torn tome pages possess a secret of tremendous magnitude, and if only they can put the pieces back together in the right placement, in the right order, they'll be able to unlock whatever mysteries the pieces contain. They become obsessed, spending every waking moment trying to piece the scraps back together. The curse goes as far as to say that the individual will only pursue any course of action if they're convinced it will help lead them to the ends of piecing all this crap back together. The victim also takes 1d8 psychic damage every week. This damage is non-negatable, meaning it cannot be reduced in any way. And also, the victim's hit point maximum is reduced by the amount of psychic damage they take. In other words, eventually the creature's going to die. Based on how high their level is and how many hit points they have, it might take a long time, but this curse will kill them eventually. I imagine some dungeon masters out there who are looking for a little bit of a more simple encounter might completely ignore this trait and choose not to give one of their players a chance to go full-on crazy town. But for those who do choose to include it, there is a huge opportunity for storytelling here. I suppose that brings us to our next point in the video though, so let's move along and talk about a few. The Grisgol is just a walking bag of potential plot hooks, and there are so many things you can do with this monster, I honestly don't really know where to start. I imagine the thing that's probably on everybody's mind right away is the whole it has a goddamn phylactery for a heart thing. Basically, this is gonna go one of two ways initially. Once the party loots the corpse of the Grisgol, they are either going to take the phylactery with them, assuming it's some kind of valuable, or they will leave it behind, not realizing what it is. One thing, however, that is certain is the Lich who created the phylactery is most definitely going to want it back. There are a ton of ways this can play out from this point, but here are some of my favorite plot stitches for Liches. Lich, are you for real? In this plot hook, the Lich who owns the phylactery is currently not corporeal. Their body was destroyed, likely by a group of adventurers, long ago. However, it was not able to manifest because the phylactery was being used as part of this construct. Maybe the construct was even created by the party wizard who wanted to do a cool experiment with the phylactery they found. Now, with the construct destroyed, the Lich is free to manifest its body beside the phylactery, which may or may not be with the party. Either way, when the Lich pops out of its phylactery, either in the presence of the party or in whatever dungeon they fought the Grisgol at, it's likely going to go to the party and thank them for liberating it. The Lich in this case assumes that the party knew what they were doing and offers them some kind of reward for its freedom. Maybe it gives the party a powerful magic item, maybe it gives them some type of arcane boon. Whatever the case is, it gives them their thing, says, "Thanks for freeing me, guys," and then heads off into the sunset to enact its evil Lich schemes once again. The party is likely not going to be at an appropriate level where they can fight a Lich and have any chance at surviving, so now they have to deal with the horrid realization that they have unleashed an undead terror into the world. They might take the gift from the Lich as thanks or just tell him to fuck off, but either way, they will likely feel responsible for the Lich's presence in the realm and might decide to go after him if they want to do the honorable thing and set their mistake right. Or they might just up and join him in his evil schemes, whatever works. Don't ditch the Lich. If you happen to have someone in your D&D party who has been playing with the idea of becoming a warlock, this might just be a golden opportunity for you. The Lich's soul, as it resides within the phylactery, might not be strong enough to manifest, so it needs an agent in the mortal world to feed its souls. Perhaps the Lich's spirit reaches out to one of the party members in their dreams, promising great power for helping in its mission to return to its physical form. It might not be that forthcoming and simply leave things at the grand power thing, but this is a chance for someone to become a Pact of the Undying Warlock with the Lich as their patron. I mean, you could really do any Warlock pack and just kind of re-flavor the patron as the spirit of a Lich if you wanted to. I mean, you could even have the object that the Lich is using as a phylactery be a sword or weapon of some kind and just go full on Hexblade. And if you don't want to go with actual Warlock levels, you could have the phylactery be some type of sentient magic item. This item might offer incredible magic powers, various castings of different and weird spells that aren't normally accessible. The sky's the limit here, really, but like all evil sentient magic items, it's going to be granting these gifts at a price. This can be a really unique and cool way to introduce a sentient item and eventual Lich into the party. A Lich sales pitch. If you describe a good chunk of the magic items the party finds as part of this thing's body as not necessarily useful, but potentially valuable to the right merchant, you're setting yourself up for a kind of interesting opportunity here. If the party tries to sell off these bulk magic items to a merchant, that can be a fun encounter where they get to go over everything they find and get paid for it, which is a cool reward, but also it sets up the merchant to maybe have a realization about what the phylactery is. And you've got a few avenues of storytelling to explore here. If somehow the merchant actually knows what this phylactery is and what its purpose is, it might just tell the party what they have. You could have a very creepy moment where this eccentric shopkeeper gets to give them a word of warning about how a Lich might be coming after them to reclaim its forgotten treasure. If the shopkeeper doesn't know exactly what the phylactery is, which is pretty likely, we're talking some high-level magic stuff here, they might direct the party to seek the counsel of a local wizard. In this case, the merchant might not be sure about what he's looking at, but he's definitely seen these types of runes before on truly foul magic artifacts in the past, so best to get it checked out and make sure that whatever this thing is, it isn't cursed. From there, the wizard or whatever magical expert the merchant directs them to might tell the party what they have in their possession, and then send them on a quest to find out what rituals are required to destroy this phylactery and then go do it. I also love the idea that the Lich might find the party and try to buy the phylactery off them without tipping them off that it's a Lich. You could have them appear masquerading as some sort of traveling artifact merchant who's just willing to pay way too much money for this thing that is allegedly just a useless curiosity. It's also totally possible the Lich might just try to take its phylactery back by force, but that feels a little bit too easy. The Grisgol ain't just Lich shenanigans, though. This is a great opportunity to give your players some key items. Literally, the Grisgol might drop a key to access a part of a dungeon somewhere else, Dark Souls style. This is also a great place to give out a faded or diminished magic item. Maybe the paladin in your party finds a holy avenger from ages past, and most of its magic has faded to the point where now it's basically just a +1 longsword. However, if they can find a way to restore its magic power, it might be brought back to its former glory, and now that player has a really cool magic weapon and a story to tell with how they got there. I also just have to talk about the maddening remains trait of the Grisgol a little bit here. You know, the curse that makes someone so obsessed with discovering whatever secret is hidden within the Grisgol's torn pages that they turn into Charlie Day. While it is definitely a pretty wild curse, what if it's not just a curse? Maybe, just maybe, some kind of entity from the far realm is manipulating the situation, and if the player cracks the code, it will open a portal to another dimension, allowing passage between the realm of madness and the material plane. That might be a problem for any of the locals. Or maybe it's not even a bad thing, and the discovery leads to a decoded wish spell scroll, allowing the individual to cast wish one time for free. Whatever the result is, it should be weird and highly magical, Unless the person is just crazy, in which case have fun playing with your magic confetti. And that's pretty much all I've got for the Grisgol this week. Ultimately, I think this monster is so cool, and while I always look forward to seeing what plot hooks and adventure ideas you guys come up with in the comments, this week I am especially excited. I just know there's so many weird and cool ideas that you can do with this creature, and I can't wait to see what y'all come up with. I'm gonna take a look at the comments and steal everything. I also want to give a special shout out to Nick H for recommending this monster. It was a really solid recommendation, so thank you for doing so. And if you have a monster you'd like to see show up on the channel someday, please leave a comment, get at me on Discord, send me a message on Twitter, whatever your preferred means of reaching me are, let me know and I will add it to the ever-growing monster recommendations list. I also just want to give a special shout out to all you lovely folks over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and the content you enjoy. As I said earlier, there is a 5th edition conversion of this monster in the form of a Google document linked down below, but of course all you lovely patrons do get access to the 5th edition monster manual style stat block with the artwork and the extra lore and all that cool fun stuff. And this week's is a 2-pager because wow, the stat block for this thing ended up really wordy and huge, so check out both pages of the Grisgol stat block over on the Patreon page. And going forward with the age-old tradition I established a week ago, it is time for Patron of the Week. This week, our randomly selected patron is Frisbee. Thank you, Frisbee, for supporting the Dungeon Dad YouTube channel and helping me keep these lights turned on. You're welcome to get stuck up on my roof anytime. So once again, thank you guys all so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Until then, I'll see ya in the next one. Bye!